All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Matt Bird.
And I am Steve Bird.
And this is Marvel Reread Club.
All right, welcome back, everybody. We are going to be doing the second half of October 1967. But before we get into that, since we are recording a few days after we recorded the other one, Matt, do you have anything that you want to bring up or say?
Nope, everything's going well here. Soccer began with a win last Saturday, and then we've got baseball coming up this Saturday. Everything's very exciting. I may have I shouldn't say that. I don't want to jinx it, but I may have a new niece about 24 hours from now. My sister-in-law her water broke this morning. So Ooh. That is a very exciting time.
Well, good. That's fantastic. I went back to Atlanta for my high school reunion. Yeah, it was really interesting. It's amazing what they were able to pull off with a very limited budget. $50 a person for 2 catered events, one of which had an open bar.
Wow.
Yeah, I know, right? I don't know. It was successful enough they might do it again. We'll see. And then meanwhile, for my Tabletop Envy business, where I laser cut and make storage solutions and accessories for nerdy tabletop games, I think I have just made my Catan storage solution, which I've been picking away at for a while. So hopefully that should be up on my Etsy store soon.
Oh, fun. Does it allow you to have multiple expansions in the same box?
Yes, it does.
Ooh, that's good, because we've got a huge stack of all of our expansions, and it takes up half of our game closet.
Yeah, it holds the base game, Seafarers, and Cities and Knights. Now, it does have about a half-inch of lid lift in order to get all of those in there, but it's all very well organized, and lots of it is ready to just take out and put on the table, and it's all organized. So I'm pretty excited by that. And next thing will hopefully be the 5 to 6 player expansions. There might be more to come.
Exciting. All right.
Yes, indeed.
I don't think we've ever discussed that business of yours on this podcast. I don't recall ever discussing it in our 112 episodes or however many we've done.
I think 118 at this point.
118?
Yeah. Well, it's one of my many businesses that I somehow am still not able to put together a full living on.
Yes.
All right, let's go ahead and get to what we're supposed to be here for today. So, I believe that Fantastic Four is mine, although I don't really remember. We might go back and listen to this and then be like, wait a minute.
If so, all we can do is apologize. We've let you down and we feel bad.
Yes. All right. Well, maybe our Patreon subscriber will go ahead and quit on us there.
Yes.
So on the cover, at last you will learn what lives ... within the cocoon, featuring the power of ... him. And we've got this weird cocoon thing that is erupting open with just a yellow glow inside, and all of the Fantastic Four, along with Alicia in her high-tech jumpsuit and the other dude in his high-tech jumpsuit, and Crystal all there as well, kind of reacting to it in a collage type look. So, when opens the cocoon, proudly presented by Stan the Man Lee and Jack King Kirby, exotically embellished by Joe Sinnott, laboriously lettered by Artie Simak. So Stan is going more pedestrian with his credits in this one than he has in some of his recent ones.
Yeah, I got to say about the cover, this cocoon is such an odd image. Like this stays with Adam Warlock. Adam Warlock. Like, our poor cats are always trying to return to the womb, and whether it means climbing in tiny boxes or whatever they can possibly do. Adam Warlock is always trying to return to the womb. He's always trying to return to the cocoon. He's constantly making himself new cocoons over the years, and it never stops looking weird. It is a bizarre imagery from Kirby, and this cover is putting it front and center. Adam never does get to be on the cover of any of these Fantastic Four issues. We just get his weird-ass cocoon, and I love it.
And I believe that we theoretically, as sort of an Easter egg, saw this in the Collector's Collection in the MCU, although I don't know if that really fits in with Adam Warlock's introduction in, what was it, the Eternals?
No. Adam Warlock was mentioned at the end of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, and then he was introduced in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. But no. They did Star Fox in the Eternals.
Ah, okay, right.
And Blade
right.
and the Black Knight. And now that movie has sort of been memory hold, then the question is, what happens to Star Fox and Blade and the Black Knight?
Well, memory hold, but in the new Captain America movie is dependent on the events of the Eternals having happened.
That's true. I'd forgotten about that.
Yeah. So, yeah, because I was sort of thinking they might just memory hold the thing and pretend it never happened. But when I saw that they were using that in that new movie, I was like, oh, okay, well, I guess they're sticking with it.
Yeah.
All right, so when opens the cocoon, the story begins in the middle. When last we saw our heroes, they were trying to figure out what happened to Alicia. Reed is working very hard trying to come up with some equipment that will be able to help him follow the weirdo who took Alicia and find out where she is. So there's a really neat looking technical drawing that he's got up on the top of page 2. Mm-hmm. So in the Beehive, or as you said, they later call it the
Enclave.
The Enclave, the fourth scientist and Alicia are both, continuing down this tunnel that they were in the previous issue, heading towards him, and they are running into all sorts of dangerous obstacles. Eventually, the scientist is waylaid by something and says, "Don't go forward, you're blind, I have to help you." And she says, "I'm not afraid, I must go in, I must find him, it's too late to turn back, and I can feel him calling me, he'll show me the way, I know he will." So Alicia is very capable and courageous and empathetic.
Yeah, she really gets a chance to shine in this storyline.
She really does. Were you pointing out recently, or is this a conversation I was having with someone else, that she is instrumental in Silver Surfer's transition to being good? She is instrumental in sort of reinforcing to Ben that he really is a human being, and she is instrumental to him accepting who he is and rescuing him in some ways from what these scientists are doing. She really has this pivotal role in a lot of these pivotal characters here.
Yes, that's true.
So the Enclave here, or the group, I don't know what. The Enclave is the group of people?
The Enclave is the group of people. That's the name of their group, but not named in this storyline, only named in their next storyline.
Okay. So top of page 6 has a really fantastic Kirby tech, high-tech, hideaway interior going on here.
Oh yeah,
with a little track that a little car is riding on, and a sort of elevator thing that's sort of free floating. And actually, one thing this is reminding me of, it's reminding me a little bit of Steve Rude.
Yes.
Right? So Steve Rude definitely has a huge influence from Kirby. And I was highly influenced by Steve Rude when I was trying to be a comic book artist. And this reminds me a little bit of the high-tech bad guy hideout that I tried to design in our adventure comic strip that we did.
Ah, yes.
Which is really coincidental because, as you said, you called that group the Conclave, and this is called the Enclave. But yes, specifically that little elevator thing there, I was trying to pull off some kind of advanced design thing doing that, and I'm like, wow, okay. I mean, I'm not saying it was I did not pull off something like this panel, but it's like a weak echo of that.
Cool.
All right. So the scientists have a failsafe. They are going to, they have a plan to blow the whole place up in case him is going to get free. Of course, that would probably kill all the other people who are in there, but who cares? They're psychos. Meanwhile, Crystal is making Johnny breakfast.
Yeah.
Hey, yeah. Stan tries to explain this away a little bit. It says, "We find the lovely Crystal serving breakfast to Johnny Storm, who has arrived at the crack of dawn in answer to the urgent summons of Mr. Fantastic." Now, you remember
Sure.
that just a couple of issues ago, Ben and Johnny woke up in the same bed in the Baxter building, and Stan's explaining away of that was that Ben had to crash at the Baxter building in Johnny's bed because he couldn't go home later that night. So I think that Johnny just is having breakfast made by his girlfriend because they were both there in the morning.
Yep.
Anyway, of course, Sue, in her superhero getup, is still making breakfast for everybody. We see this massive stack of pancakes that it looks like Ben eats in one gulp, which is a nice visual, while he's like completely glum.
Yeah, I love his huge stack of pancakes. And yes, and the fact that eating the huge stack doesn't cheer him up very much. Yes, but Sue is not only wearing her Fantastic Four outfit to cook, she's also got an apron on top of it so that, she's
right.
trying to keep from getting any food splashing on her outfit. Very important.
Well, you would think that the unstable molecules
yes.
take care of that. Hey, Reed, you need to build something else into the unstable molecules.
Hopefully the pancake batter is also made of unstable molecules, just to be safe.
Yes, and Reed has his 5 o'clock shadow that he becomes characteristically known for when he is working on some technological issue that keeps him up days on end. And this is not the first time we've seen him with his 5 o'clock shadow, right? I'm pretty sure we saw that during the Galactus storyline, if nothing else. But it looks almost a little fuller now than it usually does. This is this is about to come into a full beard. This is where he's right at the transition point from itchin' to bitchin' there. It's, just about there. So Alicia is, continuing to approach and then gets to the cocoon, and we see a real close-up of the cocoon not rupturing open. There's a little bit of Kirby crackle up in the head area and a little bit of glowingness.
And I gotta say, the Synod inks on Alicia are just absolutely gorgeous. She just has the prettiest eyes. Compare how pretty Synod eyes are to how atrocious Coletta eyes are. I know you like Coletta eyes. I shouldn't bait you. I shouldn't be a troll here, but oh my God, these Synod eyes could not be more gorgeous.
I like some Coletta eyes when he's putting in some effort. But yes, sometimes it can just look like one eye's looking this way and the other eye's looking that way when he's just hitting the deadline.
And when you close up on a lady's eyes, and Coletta, at least you could say he puts a lot of work into it. But when we're far away, when we've just got small eyes, then as I say, it often looks like he's gouged out the eyes with an X-Acto blade. They just look
sometimes
like these nasty ass gashes in the paper.
Yes. So Reed has been able to recreate the bracelet that he saw in the time reversing movie gizmo that he had last issue. So there are some goodbyes being said as the ladies are left behind, and Reed, Johnny, and Ben all use this bracelet to go through this portal.
Which is really strange. Like there's no particular reason to assume this is any more dangerous than their normal missions. They haven't left Sue behind. Now, if we had already read the annual, this would make more sense. But we haven't read the annual yet. The annual seemingly takes place after this. So there have been times in the past they've tried to leave Sue behind, but she's never put up with it. But this time, maybe she knows something she's not saying. And so then she goes ahead and accepts for once being left behind, which is out of character for her.
Right. And Crystal brings up something about Lockjaw, and it's like, yeah, couldn't they have used Lockjaw to do this? But I guess they didn't know exactly where it was, and they needed the exact copy of the thing to take them where they needed to go. Because, of course, knowing what the hardware looks like means you can get the software perfect.
Oh, of course. So then we get to one of the weirdest mistakes that Kirby ever made. They go through the barrier, and for some reason, Johnny has not gotten dressed up. Reed is wearing his outfit. Ben is wearing his outfit for what it is. And then Johnny is just in his civvies for no reason. He goes through. And then they are fighting in the beehive for several pages. And then suddenly, on page 18, Johnny is wearing his outfit. So it's like, okay, maybe he just completely forgot that he was still wearing his civvies over his Fantastic Four outfit. Maybe he's burned off his civvies and now he's wearing his Fantastic Four outfit on page 18. But wait, then we go to page 20 and Johnny is back in his civvies when they go through, when they teleport out of there.
Okay. Yeah. Wow. Okay. I had not put that together. See, everything up until that last statement you made kind of made sense. Yeah. He just came through in his civvies. He's wearing his Fantastic Four uniform under it. Unstable molecules will feel comfortable no matter what. So yeah, he burned them off and that's fine. But yeah, then they come back. That's a little bit weird. So, Ben automatically just goes beast mode as soon as they get through this thing, trying to force everyone to tell him where Alicia is.
It is, to put it mildly, clobber end time.
Indeed. Of course, Alicia is in this cave. The scientist who had gotten waylaid finally catches up. And then there's a giant explosion coming from the cocoon, and it is starting to dissolve. Him breaks out. It's really weird saying him breaks out, but that's what his name is at this point. And
yeah.
And the scientist looks like he is mortally wounded, but he has said the female need not fear. No harm shall come to her. Once again, she always has this connection with these kind of seeming inhuman beings. So he just goes ahead and flies off. He just disappears for the moment. Right about as the Fantastic Four show up and grab Alicia, who is seems unconscious but okay. So the Fantastic Four are noping out of there. They jump through the portal.
Yeah, I was going to say noping out of there too.
I may have picked up noping out of there from you. I think it's a term I was familiar with, but I started using it more after I heard you using it. So at the end, the scientists are confronted by him, who comes out of Lock 41, surrounded by Kirby Crackle, and him destroys the complex, the beehive. Then I'm not sure what happens next. As I said, I haven't read these issues, so I'm not sure if we're going to get more him next issue. I don't think we do, but, this was an interesting introduction to a character who will go on to a long and interesting history. Next, Mission Destroy the FF.
Yes, he will go on to be one of my favorite Marvel characters. He will have a long and interesting history. He will be when they made the movies of the Infinity Gauntlet storyline, they did not have Captain Warlock in it, but Captain Warlock. When they made the movies of the Infinity War storyline, they did not have Adam Warlock in it, but he was the star of that storyline in the comics. And then he finally did show up in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 in sort of a comedic role. But well played by Will Poulter. And I would love it if they eventually did something more with that character. So let me just check my notes on this issue to see if I have anything else. Yeah, they rescue Alicia and just nope out of there. They say, you guys can deal with your own stuff. They're not going like, we must save everybody here, or we must find out who this new person is. They're like, nope, we are getting out of here. The ending does seem rather rushed. I wish that we had gotten to see Adam Warlock before the halfway down the final page. And this is the last we will see of this storyline in the FF. Eventually, we will find out that him took off for outer space and that him will be back in the pages of Thor in a couple months. But this is just a great issue. Absolutely gorgeous art. Absolutely gorgeous inking by Sinnott. Just absolutely loving Sinnott's inking on this issue. On every page, on every face. Even, the faces of the Enclave here on the last page. Just so expressive. Such excellent use of light and shadow on everything. The only other note I had is, but I already said that last time, but even more so this time, it takes the FF a long time to get to the Beehive. This is really Alicia's storyline. Alicia is taking the lead and basically solves everything just in time for the FF to very belatedly show up and save the day, and to show up and not save the day, for the FF to show up very belatedly and get her out of there, which is their one role here.
Okay, so let's move on to Strange Tales, and you can take the lead on this one.
Okay, one of the most infamous Marvel comics of all time, Strange Tales number 161. So I actually did some research. I have quotes, but that won't be until the second half of the book. So let's start with Strange Tales. Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Doctor Strange, the second Doom. We have a S.H.I.E.L.D. cover, Steranko cover, and unfortunately, we've got super racism, which is a problem. We are now going to have a big storyline featuring a new villain called the Yellow Claw. Now, the Yellow Claw has a interesting history that is sort of racist and, well, I should say very racist and yet also sort of not racist, where he had his own book in the 50s. So this is classic Yellow Peril thinking, which I apologize even for using the word yellow as often as we're going to be using it. But obviously that was the name of the character, and Yellow Peril was a certain, type of story, this idea of absolutely freaking out about Asian people or Asian nations having any sort of power at all. The most famous or infamous one of these characters was Fu Manchu, who Marvel will later get the rights to and start making comic books about himself. But first, they didn't have the rights to Fu Manchu, so they made up their own villain, the Yellow Claw, who had his own comic in the 50s. But the cool thing about the Yellow Claw comic is that he was fighting a Chinese-American FBI agent the whole time, who then was in love with the Yellow Claw's daughter the whole time, which is something they stole right out of the Fu Manchu books. And so this book So just a little bit in last issue and then more in this issue, they're reintroducing this character, Jimmy Woo, who will then go on to have an interesting MCU history played by Randall Park in the MCU. But first, let's go ahead and jump into this issue.
Cover has some photo collage. There's an actual photo of New York City from the water that's down on the bottom, and an actual photo of the Statue of Liberty that's being crushed by the Yellow Claw on here. So Once again, more Steranko storytelling innovations, one of the 150.
Yes, and it is a gorgeous cover, and
it is.
It's the use of photos on the cover is really cool. I think this is the first time this is, in fact, a Steranko patented storytelling innovation, because I don't think Kirby has ever used photos on a cover, and now Steranko has. Yes, there is a giant Yellow Claw crushing the Statue of Liberty while Nick Fury and Cap fight underneath him. At this point, Captain America is just like a permanent character in the Nick Fury books, and Nick Fury is like a permanent character in the Cap books. So it's like these are just, we sort of now have 3 monthly Nick Fury titles, including Sergeant Fury and Nick Fury and him and Cap. And then Cap, we've got 2 monthly Cap titles with Cap always being over here in Nick Fury, but I don't mind. So let's go ahead and jump into the book here, The Second Tomb. We are in the middle of the flashback that we had last issue. I talked about then how I wish it wasn't a flashback, but there's sort of this clever conceit that we're going to go back and explain the Black Adam of 1965. And so we have a flashback to 2 years earlier, when last we saw both Captain America and Nick Fury were falling to their death. Captain America in the middle of the city, and Nick Fury over by the Statue of Liberty. We deal with Captain America first, and Deus Machinas of Deus Machina, it turned out that Reed Richards and Ben Grimm are just monitoring the situation. They're like, hey, we're just keeping an eye on the skies of New York City, and good thing we did, because now Captain America is falling out of the sky. So let's go rescue him. They managed, he is falling so long and so far, they have time to get to where he is, take an elevator up there, or I guess was he just happened to be falling on their roof? It's a little unclear.
Yes. Yes, they made that clear, that he would just happen to be falling pretty much right on top of the Baxter Building.
And so then using their combined powers, they catch him and break his fall, which is a lot of fun. Nobody is there to catch Nick Fury, who is falling off the Statue of Liberty, but you have an awesome sequence where he falls off the torch and then manages to grab onto the crown and flip himself around, which is really awesome. We have
grab on the crown, flip yourself around. That's what it's all about. Something like that.
Something like that. So then he is flipping his way through the Statue of Liberty, fighting these sort of costume goons who are sort of like aliens, sort of like robots, and sort of like Yellow Claw goons. It's a little unclear. And so then the Fantastic Four get Captain America all prepared to go back and fight. We have an awesome page on page 6 where we have Nick Fury trying to disable a huge weapon that the Yellow Claw goons were building. Now, this is... sometimes you just don't have enough backgrounds in Marvel Comics. And so then the goons grab him. They put him in a Houdini-style straitjacket, sort of like, of course, Steranko supposedly did himself when he was supposedly a escape artist. And then they toss him off of the Statue of Liberty again. It says that's exactly what they had in mind, as they tossed me off the statue again. You might say it was getting to be a habit. And then he lands in the water. Now, if you've ever actually been to the Statue of Liberty, you know that if you were tossed off the torch, you would not land in the water. You would land on Bedloes Island and you would die. But somehow he lands in the water. Cap is down there, rescues him. They get back inside. There is an even more amazing full splash page on page 9 of Cap with a huge bazooka and Nick Fury with just his 2 good fists plowing into the crowd. And they manage to blow up everything inside, and they do at some point cause the blackout. They mentioned that. And then the whole thing says, meanwhile, Cap was blasting these creeps with an electric charge that wouldn't quit, sending them scurrying like a pack of rats into their holes. The vibrations must have been too much, because the whole blame tunnel started to collapse, burying the bunch of them. Unfortunately, it destroyed all the evidence. The prisoners we took were like zombies, powerful men without minds. So they were never able to find out what was going on. Well, now Jimmy Woo is here, and Jimmy Woo is like, I can tell you what's going on, because this is the guy I used to fight in the 50s. He's called the Yellow Claw. We then cut to a even more gorgeous 2-page double splash of the Yellow Claw holding a little model of the Earth at all times so that he can crush it. We see that Swan, who I guess Swan is not his daughter, Swan is his niece, who is here, who was formerly Jimmy Woo's love interest, and another confederate of his. And they're talking about how next they're going to have the second tomb. It is an absolutely gorgeous issue. it is nicely written, although a bit awkward to have 3 people falling to their death over the course of the issue. But it is...
Well, 2 people, one of them twice.
Yes, 2 people, one of them twice. And,
so you can say 3 defenestrations.
3 defenestrations. But unfortunately, it is super racist, which is going to be true for the next couple months. But what did you think of this issue, Steve? And by the way, if you don't condemn the racism, it means you're racist. So with that warning, I will ask you what you think of this issue.
Well, and wasn't Yellow Claw one of the primary villain in one of the earliest comics we had?
Yes. Avengers 204 and 205 were some of the earliest comics we had. And as I was desperately trying to find Avengers 208 to finish the 2-part storyline that we started reading on vacation. And yes, it was an okay storyline. Alan Cooperberg, I think, illustrated it.
So yeah, but it's just like, yes, even in the early 80s, we were still like, what do they do with the Yellow Claw these days? I mean, they never completely write any of these things out. And oftentimes they're sort of reimagined by modern writers to try and mitigate the problematicness of them. Is he still around?
I'm guessing not. I mean, they've done their best to rehabilitate the Mandarin. Shang-Chi now has a new father, I think, but I don't think they could ever try to rescue the Yellow Claw. I mean, surely not.
I'm sure he has a name other than just Yellow Claw. They might just go ahead and do that. He's just a Asian villain. I don't know. I don't have much more to say. I'll just say on a technical level, on the beginning splash page, we see a little bit more of that halftone paper being used in the bottom left corner. And then on the double splash at the end of the issue. So I'm once again on Marvel Unlimited. Matt is reading scans of the originals. It looks as though there was a gap between the image on the left and the image on the right. Like the normal margins were there. Here in the, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on that, here in Marvel Unlimited, they have smashed them up against each other, but it looks as though Steranko was taking into account that gap would be there, and so the image goes across in a weird way in this one here, because is expecting that there's going to be like half an inch between the two. So a lot of the perspective and the lines and stuff don't quite line up correctly.
Yeah. On the original, he's accounting for the gap.
Yeah. And I think it was a poor decision that was made by somebody who was doing Marvel Unlimited. Although, honestly, you probably got some kind of intern who's not making much of anything and just running through this stuff. The only thing that I'll add is that in that double-page splash, look at Yellow Claw's open kimono-looking thing there. Can you describe the Yellow Claw's chest there?
He's got a armor-plated chest, and it's got, are you just talking about how far apart his pectoral muscles are?
I mean, they really look like large breasts.
Yeah.
If you had just shown me this image with the head cut off, I'd be like, oh, okay, that's a female character, because look at those large breasts.
Yes.
Yeah, and I'm sure it has to do with Steranko trying to show the curves of the armor with like reflections and stuff like that. But yeah, it kind of backfired.
Yes. Okay, so should we jump to the back half of the book?
Let's please do.
Okay, the back half of the book, Doctor Strange, master of the mystic arts, and a scourge shall come upon you. Not the later villain Scourge, who would be introduced many years later. This is a different sort of Scourge. And this is one of the most infamous Marvel comics of all time. So I did some research on this issue. I found a quote from Dan Atkins, where he later explained, "My art started looking like Ditko because I was told to draw like Ditko. I was never told to draw like Kirby, but I was told to draw like Ditko, presumably because he was doing Doctor Strange. I was actually told to swipe Ditko, and this was by Stan up front. So I did. But then I started going toward my own style, which is realistic and just a different style." So, okay, he was apparently told by Stan, start swiping Ditko. Well, oh boy, did he go for it, because I believe that in this issue and the next, at least, every single drawing is a swipe.
Really?
This is the most swipe-filled issue of Marvel Comics of all time. We begin with the opening page. Baron Mordo is standing over Doctor Strange, shooting bolts down at him. And if you look at, I went ahead and So this is issue 161. If you go back to issue 132, you can see where Baron Mordo comes from. If you go back to issue 133, you can see where Doctor Strange comes from. And they are both pure swipes. So I'm getting this from a post by Brian Cronin, who does Comics Should Be Good, which is part of CBR.com. And he is always one of the best historians of Marvel Comics. And he has gone through, he was the one who unearthed that quote. He is the one who showed some of these swipes. He goes through from the next issue and shows a whole 6-panel page in the next issue and shows that all 6 panels on the page were swipes from different Ditko drawings. And I believe that's true in this one. Certainly, as you go through on page 7, where you have Doctor Strange flying towards us, I remember the Ditko issue that is from. I remember the Ditko issues that almost all of these are from. You can see the one Ditko cover they made just by clipping part of the inside. You can see that show up on page 3. It is an absolutely infamous issue. Then you get to another tremendously infamous swipe. So I'll go ahead and talk about the plot of the issue. Doctor Strange.
What? The superfluous. Come on.
Superfluous. By the waving wand of Stan Lee is cast this Raymond Murray, Dan Atkins work of wondrous wizardry lettered by Al Kurzrock. So Doctor Strange, once again, this is still one damn thing after another. This Doctor Strange storyline has surely been going more than 12 issues at this point. We have outlasted the length. I mean, if you count everything from Klu'u on, then we have outlasted the length of the epic Steve Ditko storyline where versus Dormammu and Mordo. And this has all been one massive storyline. This has all been presumably one day in the life of Doctor Strange. Well, now he is still waiting for the Living Tribunal to show up and cast judgment on the Earth. And then he decided the only way to keep that from happening was to take all of the evil sorcerers in the world and take all of their power out of them and put it into, for some reason, Baron Mordo. Not the best idea. Baron Mordo is your arch foe, Doctor Strange. Why did you give him all the power of all the evil sorcerers in the world? That was a little unclear, but he did. So let me be clear. This issue is the most swipe-filled issue in Marvel Comics, but it's good. It's good. Dan Atkins was originally the assistant to Wally Wood. Wally Wood famously said, never draw anything you can copy, never copy anything you can trace, never trace anything you can cut out and paste up. Well, this appears to be mainly cutting out and pasting up. He appears to have assembled this issue out of Steve Ditko issues. Obviously, this is extremely unethical, and the fact that Steve Ditko did not get paid for this issue, which he essentially drew and inked, is a real shame. But
well, do you think it was literally paste ups?
I think this may be literal paste ups. I'm not sure. But so then he is assembling this issue, but it's good. It's a remix. It is like a good Bob Dylan song where he is taking previously existing stuff and he is remixing it to make really good art. And I like it. Meanwhile, one of the people who was summoned because their sorcerer's powers were being awakened was Victoria Bentley. Victoria Bentley is then sent home along with everyone else. But when she gets home, she's like, I think I have figured out that I have a history with Doctor Strange and Baron Mordo that had been wiped from my memory. And now I'm going to go try to rescue Doctor Strange. So she does. And of course, Doctor Strange quickly has to rescue her from a giant ant. And then they suddenly run into Nebulos, Lord of the Planet Perilous. So how many... Are we keeping count of how many different magical creatures have been piling up one on top of another over the course of the storyline? So now I know what you're thinking. Like, Matt, you said there were so many swipes in this issue. Well, Nebulos, Lord of the Planet Perilous, that's a really cool design. So we've got to give Dan Atkins some credit for that. Ups, whoop. Look at the cover of the pulp novel 1962 Pyramid Books edition of Venus Plus X by Theodore Sturgeon. Theodore Sturgeon, of course, great science fiction writer who was later the source of Kurt Vonnegut's character Kilgore Trout, was sort of a parody of Theodore Sturgeon, and Sturgeon becoming Trout. And do you want to?
Right. So, yeah. Okay. I see that. Yeah.
So, if you want to look up the cover of the 1962 Pyramid Books edition, we will put all this on the Secrets of Story webpage. All of these various swipes, and he is just shamelessly swiping, or perhaps just pasting up the cover of this pulp novel in this issue. But
well, no, the cover of the pulp novel is painted. This clearly is, redrawn and inked by him. But yes, it's also very clearly from that cover. As a matter of fact, I will give Dan Adkins credit in inking this in a way that feels kind of Ditko-ish. I mean, there's a lot more fine line work in the shadows here than Ditko would use. But there's something about it that does feel kind of Ditko.
Yes, well, apparently Dan Atkins had been told, really, really, really make this book look like Ditko. And he does. He is doing a really nice job making this book look a lot like Ditko, which was apparently his brief, what he was told to do. And I'm quite certain that when Doctor Strange is looking at the reflection of a planet with a ring in a lake in front of him on page 5, that is also from a science fiction paperback cover. But I cannot prove that, and I do not have the cover as I do with the final page. But anyway, Steve, what did you think of this infamous issue?
I was not aware of just how swipe-filled it was. I mean, I know Dan Atkins' reputation, and there were a couple of things. Like, the opening splash page looked like it was... I'm like, haven't I seen that panel somewhere before? For the most part, I think you covered it well. I will say that shot of Doctor Strange looking at that planet that looks sort of like Saturn across the reflective ocean down there, and then the heavens up above is just a stunning panel. And yeah, he probably did take that from a pulp fiction novel cover, but it is nonetheless fantastic. And the panel to the left of that, though, the full page height panel, also is great. It seems that Dan Adkins likes those because he did that earlier in one of the Submariner stories he did, where that creature was climbing up the cliff. Overall, visually, I really like it. I totally get what you're saying. And, there is an interesting debate in the comics world about the ethics of swiping.
Oh, yeah.
It's an open question, because like back in the day, there were deadlines, man. You got to get this stuff done. And so just about everyone would swipe from time to time. And then, it's like, well, if you use photo reference, is that swiping? Well, I don't know. Clearly you can get your own models or, have somebody else in the studio pose for you and do something. But, where does it cross a line? You know what I mean? Yeah. And then does it cross a line if you have too many swipes in a book? If so, where does that cross a line? If that is so, then this one clearly crosses the line. But, once again, refer back to Wally Wood. When I was trying to be a comic book artist, whenever I thought of the whole idea of swiping, it just that just seems like more work. Going back and finding the appropriate panel for what you're trying to do here, and then trying to make the style work with whatever else you'd be swiping and with your style. It's like I don't know, man. That just seems like more work than just doing the work. But I guess not. If you've got a good swipe file, and Al Williamson. I'm a huge fan of Al Williamson's pencil and ink work. As just an inker for Marvel Comics, he's okay. He's not necessarily one of my favorites. But in terms of being a penciler and inker, he's one of my all-time favorites. And as a matter of fact, I am sitting here looking at a framed Secret Agent X9 strip that I picked up from him at a convention many years ago. He was actually famous for his swipe file. He had a whole, categorized, alphabetized filing cabinet filled with photo reference and various other stuff. And so, do you count photo reference as swipes? Well, Al Williamson's filing cabinet of material was referred to as a swipe file, even though I think it was mainly magazine stuff. Unfortunately, I actually got to visit his studio back in the late 90s, I guess it was. Mark Schultz made the connection for me, and I was able to go and visit him. And I don't know. Did I just not think to ask about the swipe file and to see if I could take a look at it? I might not. Maybe I just didn't think about it. Unrelated, but just in terms of talking about swipes. Okay, I believe I'm done with that, if you are as well. A shockingly good issue. A shockingly good all-swipe issue. And, obviously, it's completely insane at this point how long this storyline has stretched on. And we haven't even seen Living Tribunal, who is the big menace at this point. We haven't even seen him for 4 issues at this point. Last we saw
Living Tribunal, he set a hourglass going, and apparently that was more like a 6-month class because he hasn't showed back up yet. But and when he does, watch out.
Yeah. And also in Strange Tales, remember, we are 2 issues into the first 12-issue storyline ever.
Yes, supposedly. Yes,
supposedly.
Even though the storyline in the back half of the book has already gone longer than that.
Yes. Okay, so Tales of Suspense featuring Captain America and Iron Man. If this be ... MODOK, or you say MODOK, that's fine. We'll call the whole thing off. Now, I find it unfortunate that you actually see MODOK on the cover here, since they have not revealed him inside the book yet, and we don't get him revealed for a little bit. And actually, he's off model there. He's not in his flying little sphere thing, his little chair buggy mago thing that he's got. He's just got a little body there.
Yep.
So any action-packed cover, Captain America and Sharon Carter taking care of a bunch of Beekeeper goons. But we will come to that in a minute. Right now, we will do the Invincible Iron Man, the Tragedy, and the Triumph. Look what's happened. Once again, Stan the Man Lee and Gene the Dean Colan have topped their previous triumphs. And leave us not forget the able assists, Dan Adkins inker and Sam Rosen letterer. So Adkins inking, I like Adkins inks generally, so, that's promising.
And I think they look gorgeous on this issue. It's always a shame when we don't get Giacoya, who I think is Coleman's best inker of the inkers they currently have. Soon we're going to get an even better Coleman inker in the form of Tom Palmer. But I think that of the inkers they currently have, Giacoya is the best. But Dan Atkins is a close second. He's doing a really nice job on this issue. And of course, when he's inking, no swipes. So that's good.
So we had talked previously about your moral revulsion at this plot line here, where Half-Face was going to have Titanium Man destroy a village that American bombers had just flown over, and then frame the U.S. for bombing whole villages out. And you had pointed out that the U.S. actually was doing this. I don't know the timeline of these things. I'm not sure where that was in terms of when that started and how much the American people knew about it. So I am going to give Stan and Gene a little bit of a benefit of the doubt on this. Whether or not you agree to is up to you. So Iron Man is just about out of power. Once again, we got to have him find his extension cord and plug it in. Hopefully he's got a Vietnamese style power cord adapter here. But no, he doesn't even do that. He actually has to hotwire it, essentially, which is kind of neat. And because he's hot wiring it, it charges up almost immediately. Iron Man fights his way out and finds Titanium Man and Half-Face. Titanium Man is about to destroy the place. We get an aside for a moment. We had this subplot starting in the previous issue. A man with a fedora whose face we don't see ends up gassing a guard at Stark Industries back in Queens and jumps over a wall. So that is a story to be completed later. So Iron Man is saving villagers from Titanium Man's chaos as he goes, and the villagers are like, oh wait, but Iron Man's an American, and we were always told that Americans are terrible, but he's actually seems to be saving us. So maybe we're wrong. And then it turns out that Half-Face learns that his wife and child, whom he has not seen since he was drafted to become a scientist, is in this village that he's just been ordered destroyed. Iron Man defeats Titanium Man, and then in the end, Titanium Man has this one energy weapon he's going to go ahead and shoot to complete his mission, but then it turns out that Half-Face has something that is able to remote control disable it, and Titanium Man collapses into the river, and Half-Face now has turned to the side of good, because he realized that he would have killed his wife and child, and that clearly anything that would have him do that must be something he must leave behind. So, yes. Next, another surprising new change in the life of Iron Man.
Yeah, they keep sort of rebooting this book. But clearly this is something that was going on, because the whole concept of the storyline is like, well, the whole world has turned against America because of America bombing villages in North Vietnam. So therefore, I will have Titanium Man destroy one of our own villages, and the whole world will blame America. Like, yes, but this whole thing makes no sense. America was obviously already doing this. That's why America was so unpopular around the world. And anyway. The whole thing is highly offensive, and so you've got this bizarre spectacle of Iron Man trying to save North Vietnam from the North Vietnamese, when, of course, what was actually going on, this is right around the time that the documentary Hearts and Minds came out, which contained the infamous line, "We had to destroy the village in order to save it." That's what was actually going on, but it's just deeply offensive. But a couple more notes on the issue. Gene Colan has definitely forgotten that there is a human being inside of Titanium Man who is now grown to at least 25 feet tall in this issue. His legs are taller than Half-Face. Like, Half-Face can walk underneath Titanium Man if he needs to.
Well, whenever you've got something like that, I just assume that there is the cavity inside the torso is about the size of a man. And so you've got a man in there essentially working servos or something like that. Servos? That's not the right word. I know better than that these days. I know what a servo is. That's not what it is. So, but that there's a man inside working some kind of joysticks or remote control or whatever, so that he's doing the motions, but this giant thing is repeating those motions at a larger size. That's how I usually rationalize this.
Yes. Seemingly, that is what is going on, because when he first appeared, they made it clear he was just a giant dude who was wearing even more giant armor and actually had his arms and legs inside the arms and legs. That was made very clear when he first appeared, but that is no longer true. It seems like he's got kind of a mini skirt on now, which I don't remember him having before. You can certainly see on page 6 that it seems to be a mini skirt.
I think he didn't he? That's not uncommon. I mean, remember, Iron Man had a little mini skirt when he first appeared. That doesn't seem uncommon when people are doing armor type stuff and they're like, what happens at the crotch? Let's just go ahead and give it a little mini skirt.
Yeah.
All right. So
anyway, but Half-Face ends up being not a terrible villain. I like his look. I like the idea of somebody realizing, like, oh, I had to leave my wife and child behind to go off and become a villain. Oh no, now my villainry is, possibly going to kill my wife and child. I will switch to the sides of good. That's all fine. That's all classic comic storytelling stuff. But the whole core concept of these two issues is just deeply offensive to me.
Okay. So let's move on to Captain America, Living Legend of World War II, If This Be MODOK. Now, I mentioned to you last episode that I had started watching the MODOK miniseries. It ended up being a miniseries. It was supposed to be the first season of a series that would then merge together with a bunch of other series to make a whole little universe. But it ended up being just 10 episodes, and it was very entertaining, bizarre, absurd, gory, strange. But so whenever I hear MODOK talking in this, I cannot help but hear him as Patton Oswalt.
Yes.
All right. So from the Titanic typewriter and peerless pencil of Stan the Man Lee and Jack King Kirby, embellished by Joe Sinnott, lettered by Sam Rosen. So we've got the full A team here on this one.
Yes.
All right, so when last we left off, Captain America was kind of paralyzed somehow, and Sharon Carter, whose name we still do not know, had just gone through a little panel, very similar to the panel that we just saw in the Fantastic Four earlier, but this one's on the floor, if I remember right. So it actually appears also very much like Doctor Doom's time machine. But she had gone through this portal to go and actually see MODOK. Right, so now Captain America is sent down, presumably through that same portal, and finds himself just in more Kirby Tech hallways until he gets shot at and we see MODOK. So I assume most people listening to this podcast will have an idea of what MODOK is, and we talked a little bit about it a couple of issues ago, but he's essentially a giant head that is like, larger than a human being's torso, with little arms and legs sticking out. I mean, the arms and legs are probably not that dissimilar from the size of a normal person's arms and legs. It's just that he then has this head that is, 50 times larger than a human head. And he looks really monstrous and hideous in this one. I don't think they keep him quite as hideous looking in the future, do they?
Yeah. I mean, if you want to try to find a MODOK comic where he is not hideous, you can try. But I think you might be searching for a while there. He's a pretty hideous guy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he looks almost like sort of a bug-eye alien face here, and I don't remember that as much. They make it clear that this was a human being at one point. Once I was a mere human guinea pig for the scientists of AIM, but they did their job too well, and now I am their master. And Sharon warns Captain America, Cap, be careful. His brain is his weapon. He can use it to control, to fight, and if he desires, to destroy.
But of course, this is all very similar to the storyline going on in the other Lee Kirby Synod book, the Fantastic Four, where you've got scientists who create an ultimate human being who then turns on them and tries to take control of the organization, and they're desperately trying to stop him. This is all a very similar storyline. Both all-time great characters who would go on to massive, fantastic careers, but it is very odd that these two storylines are going on at the same time.
Yeah, well, I think I seem to have observed that Stan Lee will often, rehash the same plot in the same month. And I know we've had this discussion before of, is that evidence that these are Stan Lee writing these because they're the same plot, or is it evidence that it's not Stan Lee writing these because why would he use the same plot? But it seems to happen on, I think we've seen it like half a dozen times so far.
But in this case, it's the same scripter, same penciler, same inker. So,
well, maybe Jack Kirby's doing it here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So apparently MODOK is like really agile in this, which I don't remember being a part of his character. I don't know if that really sticks around. But he's able to, follow Captain America around with his weapons, even though Captain America is very agile himself. The AIM scientists are like, dude, MODOK is otherwise occupied. Let's get the hell out of here right now. And so a bunch of them are getting into an escape sub. So some other AIM scientists are heading down this hall rather than making it straight for the submarine in order to try to finish MODOK off. And during MODOK's battle with Captain America, right when MODOK is able to essentially grab Captain America's shield with his brain bolts or whatever it is, and Cap and Sharon are on the run. Sharon is acquitting herself well. She is karate chopping some of these guys unconscious. The escape sub is about to make it out, but Captain America is able to pry the escape hatch open with his shield.
Really nice sequence.
Yes, very nice sequence. MODOK, we see, has his little hover buggy chair thingy has been destroyed, and we see his hideous little body below the giant hideous head. And he then uses his brain bolt to hit some kind of emergency detonator and blow up the main sub. Fortunately, Captain America and Sharon Carter had gotten aboard the escape sub and are now essentially holding the surviving AIM goons hostage and making them take Cap and Sharon back to S.H.I.E.L.D. And in the background, we see the explosion of the main sub, and supposedly MODOK is now no more.
Sharon says to Steve, "You saved my life, yet I've never even told you my name, nor have I ever seen your face beneath that mask. How strange it took MODOK to bring us together again, and now we don't even know if he's alive or dead." And then Captain America says, "Listen, that explosion from afar, I think you can forget about MODOK now. Your questions have just been answered." Like, oh yes, we're never going to see MODOK again after having created this great character. Stan and Jack are just going to completely forget about him. Like, no, we're going to see lots of MODOK going forward. I think you've infected me now. I'm now saying MODOK.
Yes.
But it's just utterly bizarre that at no point has Cap ever asked her name, and she has said, "I won't tell you." Cap has just seemingly never asked her name. She's like, "Well, Cap, you haven't asked my name, and I'm too proud to tell you, so we're just going to continue to be on a no-name basis between the two of them, and you're just going to have to say, 'Hey, you,' every time you want me to turn my head." And it's just, what a bizarre, because eventually they'll start calling her Agent 13, and you would think, like, okay, if you don't want to reveal, if it's like she's a secret agent, she doesn't want to tell you her real name, so call her Agent 13, but calling her nothing at all, just utterly bizarre. So before we move on, let me just point out that I just read a truly bizarre storyline. I'm currently reading my son, the Mantlo Hulks, which are some of my favorite comics.
Oh, yeah.
But we got to the most bizarre storyline from Mantlo Hulk, where MODOK decides he wants a bride. So he kidnaps Bruce Banner's girlfriend at the time, Catherine Waynesboro, and turns her into Ms. MODOK. So he forces her into the machine that can instantly turn you into a MODOK. And so then she is going around. But this is, once again, as with this storyline, he creates Ms. MODOK, and then she is too advanced for him, and she turns on him. And then she ends up going back into the machine and turning back into Banner's girlfriend as a normal woman shortly after she becomes Ms. MODOK. And I'm like, wow, that has got to leave some sort of mark on your body.
Or at least your psyche.
Yes. When you go from being a normal human being to being a MODOK and then back to a normal human being over the course of a couple of hours. Like, wow, that has got to hurt. That is
Yeah, there are going to be some stretch marks.
I was going to say there's got to be some stretch marks. And then I'm like, no, that sounds misogynistic. That sounds like, oh, you women and your stretch marks.
You can get stretch marks anywhere. I was literally thinking on her head.
Yes. To be clear, I'm sure if a man became a MODOK and then became a non-MODOK, that then he would also have stretch marks. We're not trying to be misogynistic here. Okay.
Yes, in the Marvel Comics card game, a legendary that I have mentioned a number of times that I play a lot of, there is one henchman group called MODOKs, and it is just MODOK versions of every Marvel character that are there. So I'm assuming this was from the Secret Wars set of cards. So I'm guessing in Secret Wars there was some reality where everybody had been fed through the MODOK machine.
Yes. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to our final book of the month, Avengers number 45. And unfortunately, we have the sad return of Don Heck. He is returned for both this issue and the annual, which we will cover in our next episode. And thankfully, that is it. You don't know this, Steve. For all you knew when you were reading these two issues, Don Heck was back for good. But nope, we're going to get John Buscema back next issue. And this is just a horrific 2-issue return of Don Heck here.
And inked by Vince Colletta.
Yes.
However, as I have said, I think that if they had kept Vince Colletta and Don Heck together as a pair, neither one of them would have quite the reputation that each one of them does now. I think that Coletta's inking style actually kind of lends itself to Heck and vice versa. So yes, this is not a good issue, but I think that pairing is a smart thing they should have done more often.
So we have Blitzkrieg in Central Park. Stanley personally presents and polishes a Roy Thomas Don Heck melee of matchless Marvel magnificence, delineated by the proud pen point of Vince Colletta, lettered by the fumbling fingers of Sam Rosen. You might want to reverse those.
Back to humiliating your letterer once again.
On the cover, you have a giant super adaptoid fighting all of the Avengers, presumably in Central Park, although you really can't tell that on the cover. So we go into the inside, Blitzkrieg in Central Park, featuring the far-out fury of the super adaptoid. So we are doing these books a little bit out of order. We should have done the annual before we did this. Well, the annual does come after the issue of Fantastic Four we just looked at, but it comes before this issue of Avengers because Thor and Iron Man returned for the annual, and they are still hanging out with the Avengers. And there's a little note that they're here because they showed up in the annual. So this is definitely taking place after that. So then we jump in to the issue. We see Thor and Hercules and Iron Man flying around. Thor is kind of having to drag Hercules behind him because Hercules can't fly. We then cut to Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver getting ready in their own headquarters. And we find out that everybody is coming to the park to... All right, now I can't remember why. The Avengers are making some sort of appearance in Central Park.
Well, let me just say about the dragging Hercules along. And Heck really sort of cheats in a way that does not help very well here, because we don't get to see Hercules holding on to the end of the length of rope that Thor is holding. So Hercules' hand is just behind Thor's arm. And so it's just like, why is Thor carrying a piece of rope? And since when can Hercules fly? Oh, you have to think about it for a little bit, which is a cardinal sin of comic book storytelling.
Yes, fundamental storytelling error. So it turns out everybody is gathering in Central Park for Avenger Day. The city has declared a little holiday here. It's Avenger Day, I guess, to celebrate the fact that they saved the world in the annual, probably. They're there, but it turns out one of the dudes in the crowd, just looking like a normal dude, except for if you look very closely at the irises of his eyes, which have a waffle pattern, is the super adaptoid. And he's colored in an odd manner where it's hard to tell if this is just a coloring thing or if he's actually blue. You would think people would notice if he was actually blue. But he remembers fighting Captain America and leaving because he was convinced all the Avengers were dead. So then everybody is arriving in the park for Avengers Day. And then I'm just going to skip ahead. We've been recording for a while. Eventually, the Super Adaptoid shows up and tries to kill everybody. And instead, they fight the Super Adaptoid and defeat him. That's basically the end of the issue. There's sort of a neat sequence where Goliath and the Wasp and Super Adaptoid all shrink down small because they all have shrinky powers, and they're all fighting in tiny shape for a while. And then the Wasp is like, wait a second, I can go ahead and grow up to normal shape and just reach down like a giant and pick up little Super Adaptoid and fling him against a tree, which is in all of the various Goliath Wasp comics we've read. I've never seen anybody actually do that before, and it is pretty awesome. Unfortunately, he figures out how to become human sized before he hits the tree, so it doesn't do any good. But it was at least a badass thought that she had. Anyway, they fight for a bunch more pages and then they win. And that is the end of the issue. The protesters, of course, Marvel Comics, never any shortage of protesters here, but these are not protesters. They have people picketing with signs who are supporters instead of protesters. And some of them have seemingly brought their paint and poster board with them because they very quickly make a new sign that says, "An Avenger a day keeps the Super Adaptoid away." So it's a good thing that they brought some paint and poster board so that they could quickly whip that up. And then that is the end of the issue. They march in the Avengers Day celebration. I blew through this issue very quickly, but I don't care about it. What do you have to say about it, Steve?
I do not disagree with you on most of this. I will just point out some sort of more ridiculous things in here rather than talking more about the story in general. Well, page 5, panel 1, where you see Hawkeye and Thor's faces up close. Thor's head in that is just... There's so much wrong with it. Well, no, it's not so much wrong. It's just that his eyes are tilted too far to where his right eye on our left is way too far down. And then his helmet is tilted kind of the other way, you know, in relation to his nose and mouth. And it just really looks like something has gone horribly wrong with Thor's face. So at one point, one of the camera people who's here says, "Our lookout man just spotted a car heading this way. In New York City, imagine a car heading this way." Yeah. Now, it could be maybe a car on one of the roads in Central Park that usually things aren't allowed to be on. I don't know, but that just really took me out of the story for a moment. I'm like, you do know how cities work, right? In that crowd of fans that are there for Avengers Day, and you were calling them protesters. I mean, come on, it's a public holiday, and here's the big public event that they're having. That's what people are there for. They just brought placards to be like, "Yay, we're fans."
I guess it's obviously wrong to call them protesters, but you can still call them picketers because they certainly look like picketers with their poster boards on their sticks. Pro picketers for pro.
Okay. So with that crowd, we get some dialogue from them. That far out flivver is Ennsville. I'm guessing flivver is some kind of nickname for a car. Face it, sis, who'd want to fly around all day in one of those gimmicked up crates when they can afford a go buggy like that? Listen to that baby roar. It must be running on tiger power instead of horsepower. As I bet it's the Wasp. I heard she just came into some money, and then someone says, "You call $5 million, quote, some money? Sheesh." And I think I looked it up, and that's about $50 million today. So yeah, that's not nothing. Although in our new Gilded Age here, it just seems like it does seem like nothing in comparison to the mega wealthy here.
I put it into the computer, and it says that $5 million then is a dozen eggs today. So that's a lot.
We still get eggs for like $5 or $6 a dozen at our local farmers market. I just don't get it.
I'm just making a standard Tonight Show joke.
I know. So, but I find it really odd how they're characterizing Hercules. At one point, he seems to be getting the idea that Wasp is flirting with him. Now, of course, she always does this. She just has a habit of doing this, either because she's just a flirty person or because she's trying to make Hank jealous, or both. And Hercules is thinking, yet she is the chosen of Goliath, or so I have ever assumed. Besides, I know full well the sorrow that may befall when a god doth love a mortal. It must and shall not be. And I'm like, have you ever read any Greek myths?
Yeah.
This is not, that's not how these things work. And at one point, a cop says to Captain America, I know you Avengers aren't exactly practical Joker types, so we'll go along with whatever you say. What do you want us to do? So we're just like, yeah, okay, I'm just going to take orders from somebody who's not in the chain of command now. That's totally fine. Did you notice the Super Adaptoid's boots?
What about no. What about them?
The cuffs are fringe. What Avenger has fringe on their boots?
You know, he wants to have a little bit of originality. He wants to have a little bit of his own personality come through. He's like, I haven't helped but notice that my outfit is somewhat derivative of all of the Avengers except for green. Maybe I can, go shopping on Carnaby Street in London and get myself some cool 60s boots.
What street?
Carnaby? Did I make that up?
Isn't there something else, Savoy Row or something like that? I don't know. I have no clue. I just wanted to put you on the spot with that one. Like, did he just make that up?
You could tell that I wasn't entirely certain of what I was saying.
Yes. So yeah, it just looks like he went to, where the hippies shop and went and got some boots with the little sort of leather fringe strips.
I just looked it up. Carnaby Street is a famous pedestrianized shopping street in Soho, central London, known for its fashion and lifestyle retailers. It is a hub for both independent boutiques and global brands and has a rich history as a center of youth culture and music. So thank you. I knew exactly what I was talking about when I said Carnaby Street.
You are correct. I will stand here on my wrongness and be wrong. Okay, so, and then the last thing is something that jumped out at me, but obviously this wouldn't have jumped out at you. This would have come across as just, oh, of course. But I didn't remember this cultural reference. One of the hipster people in the audience says, we weren't spying, so help us Napoleon Solo. But we couldn't help seeing what happened. I was like, what the hell does Napoleon Solo mean? But obviously, you're going to know. Could you tell the audience who Napoleon Solo is?
Napoleon Solo is the main character of the show Man from U.N.C.L.E., actually created by Ian Fleming.
Which I've never seen.
Yes.
Oh, wait. The Man from U.N.C.L.E. was created by Ian Fleming?
He gets co-creator credit on the character Napoleon Solo. He developed the character for the show after he had sold away the rights to James Bond. Anyway, the last thing I ever want to get into is the rights to James Bond because I could talk for weeks about that. But at one point,
anybody could, yes.
They originally developed the show Man from U.N.C.L.E. with Ian Fleming, and he gets co-creator credit on that character. But even though I think he did not get co-creator credit on the show. But anyway, so yes.
News to me.
Napoleon Solo, Robert Vaughn's character on Man from U.N.C.L.E.
Okay, so anyway, that is it. Yeah, I don't think we need to have any more discussion of this issue. I have already belabored it more than we needed.
Oh, I had a couple more notes now, actually, that I look at it. So at one point, they're like, so this has happened many times over the course of last year. They're like, all the Avengers are here. But what about Black Widow? Shouldn't she be here? Isn't she sort of an Avenger? But then Hawkeye says Black Widow is retiring and is not going to be Black Widow anymore. And I'm like, good, because I never liked her. And then even better, they go ahead and invite Hercules to join the Avengers. So Hercules is in and Black Widow is out, which I am more than happy about. I also note that at one point, Hank says, my field is biochemistry, not physics. It's like, yes, Hank, that is right. Biochemistry, not physics, and not robotics. That is another thing that you do not know anything about. So don't go messing with that in the next couple issues.
Yeah. No, he is a super scientist. And he's a jack of all trades, but master of none.
Very much so.
All right. So I believe that should be it. Any closing? Well, before we go to the closing words, I will once again say, because we had the whole discussion in the last episode, if you feel like giving us a couple bucks, and no, we don't have any premium content up there for this yet, or if we ever do, we put in enough work on doing this as it is, but if you feel like sending us a few bucks, our Patreon is patreon.marvelrereadclub.com. That will redirect to the Patreon page.
Yes, please go ahead and do that. That would be fantastic. I'm glad to hear that we have at least one patron so far. But so this was a good month of Marvel Comics. It's Heartstopper to see Heck back on Avengers, but thankfully it's just for the one issue. And we had some really nice comics. Fantastic Four was, just looking at the ones we looked at in this episode, Fantastic Four was a really nice comic. Steranko, Nick Fury was amazing. Even the all-swipe issue of Doctor Strange was shockingly good. MODOK, absolutely legendary. And everything else was okay. So yeah, not a terrible half month of Marvel Comics here. But so yes, do we have anything else to say?
When next we meet, we will be dealing with the annuals of 1967. I have just begun reading them at this point. I'm about halfway through Daredevil. And let me tell you, no, I have nothing to tell you.
Yes, I think we're going to do the annuals without a guest for the first time in a long time.
We had gone back and forth on that, but then you decided since these annuals aren't particularly good, we didn't want to inflict them upon a guest. Since they're not particularly good and they are particularly long.
Yes, but we are going to inflict them on you out there in podcast land.
Yes.
So that is what we are going to be covering next. We will try to have fun with them, even if we are going to have more fun doing the podcast than we did actually reading them. Okay.
We will poke fun. Okay, well, yeah, thank you, everybody. We always appreciate it. It is a pleasure doing this for you, and we are glad if you like it. If you do like it, by all means, please go to our to the podcatcher where you get this and let them know with a rating or review. That always makes my week. When we see that we've got a new one of those. So even if it's just a 5-star check, then that's great. Even better is something that's written. But yeah, please make my day. And sorry, that sounds very threatening. Please make my week. All right, that's it. Thank you very much, everybody. Take care, and as always, stay safe out there.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed it, we now have a Patreon where you can show your appreciation. If you've got a few bucks, head over to patreon.marvelrereadclub.com to support us. Also, you can still rate and review us at your podcatcher of choice, and that would be greatly appreciated as well. You can find us online at marvelrereadclub.com, as well as Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, and Threads. See you next time.